until it's finished.
No,
there's nothing worse than saying that before.
I'm delighted. Get them all in. Make sure they're all happy.
Oh, I'm going to test this mic. Hang on.
Oh, hi, Matt. It's Bill.
Oh, cool.
2, 3.
Hi, mate. So to be stating this, I spoke to Ed earlier. I presume your guys are recording across this feed. Yeah, I thought so, but I thought I'd just check just in case.
Sorry.
Okay, mate. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Matt. Bye, mate. Bye.
I'm wide open. 4-3 is my colour temperature on this one.
John, I'm going 4-7.
4-3 preset. Mine's too golden around.
Is it?
Yeah. But you might have a much. What you're going to see is my stomach now, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a cross.
It's something about shooting cameramen once they go past the age of 35. It's not flattering
It's like
anymore.
wearing a corset. You can tell we have so much fun there. It's brilliant.
It's all those days that we spend standing outside someone's house, knowing there's no one in there, waiting for someone to leave when there's no one.
I was going to say, do you remember
South London?
Neil and Christine Hamilton? Did you ever do them?
Oh my
Because
God.
you used to stare outside their house and you go, I don't really want to do this, it's terrible. So they come out with teas and coffees and biscuits. And what they do is, it's a perfect ploy. You go out there and they feed the crews, and everybody gets their shots, and they go, well, what am I here for? And you go, all to sleep.
Well, I always remember, what was his name? Who's the one that wrote the books? Cain and Abel.
Jeffrey Archer.
Jeffrey Archer.
Down on South Bank.
Or when he was at the Old Bailey, he'd get out of the taxi like 20 yards down and then walk up. So everyone got their shots.
And is everybody happy?
It worked really well.
Oh, media love is what I say.
But you.
That's okay. As long as you come. Turn the chair around so you can get somebody.
Just because I know what your reputation is like for misbehaving, I thought.
Keep an eye on it and not touch it. This is how. Loving it. Love that.
I said him anyway as well.
I think it's good enough.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Can I shuffle over a bit? Can I shuffle it around more?
No, we have told them that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
People forget. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's what you like. Keep it up.
I think it's fine with that. That's it.
And put my pre-roll on. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? No, I'm so used to it. Actually, I had a stroke. How long have we got?
Yeah. 30 minutes.
Okay. Great. Yes, moon machine there.
But you're standing next to that light,
Going for that moon.
reflecting in my they're not.
Not yet. Not intentional. Oops. I'm delighted.
Oh yeah, actually that's a really good point. I don't think we did that.
My tendency to just because I'm always laptop ready, so. I'm going to set the precedent of not standing.
Okay, fine.
I actually thought this yesterday standing up. I don't know what the etiquette is. Do you sit down once you ask the question, or do you stand up?
Yeah, that's true. I never actually
About 30 seconds. You're going forward.
I had to find that.
Actually, the Greens at theirs, it was very much they sat down.
Okay. Stand by, everyone.
Hi, good morning, and thank you all for coming to our very first press conference in our new HQ. Now, the eagle-eyed among you will have guessed what our party is calling for today. But before I get into that and take your questions, let me set out why I think the Chancellor needs to act now, not wait till the summer or indeed to the autumn budget. Just look at what's happening as a result of Donald Trump's idiotic war in Iran. Let's not forget it's a war that both Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage supported enthusiastically without a thought about how it would affect the world economy and the livelihoods of every person in the United Kingdom. Mortgage rates have soared. Fixed energy deals have gone up by over £100, and experts suggest that energy bills are going to go up by hundreds of pounds later this year. But the biggest impact right now is what we're seeing at the pumps. A tank of petrol now costs £11 more than it did before Trump's war. A tank of diesel is £23 more every time you fill up. That is the Trump tax on driving, the Farage tax on driving, the Badenoch tax on driving. And it's hurting families and businesses across the country. People who were already struggling with the cost of living, already having to find real problems making ends meet. Now they're having to find even more money, cut back even more, worry about the cost of driving to the shops or the daily commute or the school run. And all those self-employed and small business owners who have to travel to work, whose vans are their offices, already hit by high tax rises and red tape. This extra Trump, Farage, Badenoch tax is the last thing they need. Businesses, families, pensioners, people need help now. And that's what we're calling for today. Action now to tackle the costs of Trump's war and keep Britain moving. And that means cutting the costs of trains and buses too. So we're calling for a 10% cut in rail fares, saving a typical commuter in Winchester, for example, more than £50 a month. And we're calling for the cap on bus fares to be cut too. It used to be £2 before Labour put it up to £3. Our plan would cut it back not just to £2, but down to £1. £1 a bus ticket wherever you need to go. And on electric vehicles, our plan would make them cheaper to run, starting by cutting VAT on public charging, coupled with a review to bring down unfair network costs that drivers ultimately have to pay too. And then there's petrol and diesel. Especially important today as people set off to join families and friends for the Easter weekend. 21 million trips, the busiest weekend on British roads in years. Many families are sitting in queues at petrol stations right now, waiting to get their holidays started, paying more than they should to fill up for the journey. In recent days, both the Conservatives and Reform have tried to backpedal and pretend to care about rising prices at the pump, rising prices that are a direct result of a war they championed. But their proposed solution is nowhere near up to the task. They say cancel the 5p rise that won't fully take effect till next March anyway. The Farage-Badenoch plan would give drivers no help now at all. No help until next September, and even then only 1p a litre. We say the Chancellor needs to go much further now to keep Britain moving. Cut fuel duty now, not by 1p, not by 5p, but by 10p a litre. Cutting the cost of filling up a 55-litre tank by £6.60, giving families the help they desperately need today. The people of Britain didn't start this war. They didn't cheer it on, but they are paying the price for it every single day. So Rachel Reeves has a choice. She can stand up for those people and act now, or she can stand back and watch them struggle. Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage made their choice when they cheered for Trump's war. We've made ours. Now it's the Chancellor's turn. Thank you. So I'll take questions. Can I start from the BBC from Jack?
Thank you. Jack Fenwick, BBC News. With the economy in a tricky spot right now, how do you justify tax cuts for all rather than targeted support? And also, if I may, we've got important elections coming up. We know that Labour and the Conservatives have been struggling in the polls. Why do you think it is that Nigel Farage and Zach Polanski appear to be capitalising on that more effectively than you?
Well, let's talk about the economy. The economy is going to be hit by these higher petrol and diesel prices. And one of the reasons why we're saying cut fuel duty is get the economy going. And we can show that we can afford this because the Treasury is getting huge amounts of money, a windfall from the extra taxes. This next 3 months, which is our temporary tax cut, they're going to get the £2 billion we need to fund our tax cut in extra taxes from oil and gas. So our policy is completely funded and it will help our economy grow. It will cut inflation and that will ease pressure on interest rates. So this is a measure to help the cost of living, help the cost of business, but also help our economy. In terms of the elections, we keep winning elections. We won more council by-elections last year than any other party. I expect big gains for us in May. I tell you what, though, I wouldn't want a Green council. The Green Party have forgotten the environment. Just look at their record. In Mid-Suffolk, the only majority-run Green council, they are 162nd in the Recycling League. Top 20, 14 of those councils in the top 20 of recycling are Lib Dem run. The Greens have actually fallen behind Reform in terms of the environment. And if you want to care about nature, if you want to care about the environment, you vote Liberal Democrat for your council. Right, can I go to Lucy?
Hello, thank you, Ed Davey. You're very concerned, clearly, about how much energy is costing people. In terms of supply at the pumps, should they be following the likes of the Australian Prime Minister in advising only using the fuel that they really need? And separately, you've very much led the charge in Parliament over Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Given the King is going to the United States, should he meet with Epstein survivors?
Well, let's deal with that question first. I think the statement we had from the King and the Queen about the victims of Epstein, I think spoke volumes, and it showed their compassion for the victims, and I think they've led the way showing that compassion, and that's exactly right. I don't know if they've got a plan to meet Epstein's victims on that state visit. As you know, I don't think the state visit should be going ahead for other reasons. But it will be up to Number 10, working with the Palace, to make those sorts of decisions. Sorry, remind me of your second question again.
Second question. Look,
Your first question.
First question. Should people, you're worried about energy costs when it comes to supply. Should people be thinking about their behaviours now when it comes to filling up their cars with petrol, for example?
Well, one of the reasons our package has this reduction in bus fares to just £1 and a cut in rail fares by 10% is to encourage people, if they can, to shift. But that will be up to people. We might see quite crowded buses, and that would be a good thing. But of course, there are many parts of the country, many people who can't shift onto public transport. Rural areas, for example, they've got no alternative. So we've got to help those people. They literally have no alternative. But it's interesting you mentioned Australia. Australia's cutting fuel duty, as are other countries. Spain and Italy, India, states in the United States like Georgia and Utah. So actually, if you want to look at what other countries are doing, Liberal Democrats are saying, look at those examples, and I want us to follow Australia in cutting fuel duty. Jasmine.
Jasmine Cameron, question at ITV. Given the pressures on energy supplies, will the Lib Dems be echoing calls from the Tories for new oil and gas drilling in the North Sea? And secondly, if I may, the Prime Minister yesterday said that the UK would pursue closer economic ties with the European Union. Do you think there can be any meaningful progress on this while we're out of the single market and the customs union?
Well, on the North Sea, I mean, I keep hearing Kemi Badenoch talking about this. She says that we can get 2.5 billion extra in tax revenue, and that will help cut bills. She's just lying. This is a desperate lie from the Conservatives because I think they're so desperate. Everyone knows that is nonsense. And indeed, they would not have enough any extra money to help people in the first few years of her policy. So I think that's quite outrageous that she's misleading British people. As you know, when I was Secretary of State for Energy, I issued lots of oil and gas exploration licences. So I've got a very strong track record on that. And I think, take Jackdaw, for example, that had its exploration licence granted over 20 years ago. And it was the Conservatives who failed on the production licences to get that gas field going. We're going to need lots of oil and gas in the years to come. I think Jackdaw is an example where we could proceed. It's going to pass all the tests. And on Europe and what the Prime Minister said yesterday, the Prime Minister's odd. He won the election with the Ming Vase strategy. If you remember, he wasn't going to say very much. And he's almost taken that into government. And on Europe in particular, I mean, he's been pretty timid and Ming Vase-like on everything from social care to the economy. On Europe, he's just like that. Because I agree with the premise of your question. Unless we engage with the customs union and other issues like the youth mobility scheme, we're not going to change the debate with Europe. We're not going to rebuild the trust that we need so we can get our economy going. So the Prime Minister is far too timid and far too weak on Europe. Right, could I go to Anja? Anya, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, silly gems. Anya Potch on Funnies.
Hi.
You referred to what's going on in the Middle East as Trump's idiotic war. Do you think the Prime Minister needs to use stronger language, and how would that further the UK's interests?
Well, the Prime Minister needs to show an alternative. But, I was listening to Donald Trump last night, and I actually agree with him on one thing. He's incapable, he's not smart enough to bring this to an end. And we've got to see an end to the fighting. He's shown that it's not smart enough to deal with the Straits of Hormuz challenge, which will remain, according to the President. And that's where the Prime Minister needs to step up. We've heard some good first steps, but we're going to need an international coalition from Europe, from the G7, from the Gulf countries, and no doubt others, to do the diplomatic heavy lifting that the President is incapable of doing. And if we can get the Straits of Hormuz open, that will be the biggest benefit to British people, not just in petrol and diesel, but energy bills. So that should be the target. But I'm afraid Donald Trump himself has cut himself out. He's put the special relationship on life support. I regret that, but that's what Donald Trump has done.
Do you think we should use stronger language against them?
Well, I've been using strong language for quite a while, as you probably have noticed. And I thought it was obvious what Donald Trump was going to do from the day he got elected. And before he was even inaugurated, I said we've got to plan other alliances for our economy and our defence. And I talked about a new UK-EU customs union ahead of him putting all his appalling tariffs. So I've been calling out Donald Trump for some time. I've said, for example, that the Prime Minister should have cancelled the state visit of the King because Donald Trump should not be rewarded. He shouldn't be given prizes and baubles as he insults our troops, insults our country, and wages his idiotic war. So yes, we should be stronger against this incumbent in the way that other leaders like Mark Carney and Macron have been. Right, Natasha.
Thank you, Natasha Clark from LBC. Obviously, all of us are feeling the cost of living squeeze and have done for some time. Are you personally taking action to change your own energy usage? And if I may, Kanye West is due to headline Wireless Festival in North London in July, despite a string of anti-Semitic remarks. Do you think that concert should still go ahead?
Let me deal with Kanye West first, because it's extremely serious. This is a person who wrote a song saying Heil Hitler, praising Adolf Hitler. I can't think of anything more anti-Semitic. Now, the Australian government has earlier banned him from going to Australia for those anti-Semitic hate speech, and we should too. The Home Secretary should ban him from coming to this country. We've got to take anti-Semitism more seriously. We can't have people like him with a horrible song coming. And we've argued, for example, that the IRGC should be banned. The Conservatives refuse to do it. This government's refused to do it. We need to get tougher on anti-Semitism.
Energy users, are you changing your own?
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. We have an electric vehicle, and I'm very fortunate because that's easier to fill up, as it were, to jet charged. So yeah, that's one example. But I do take the train whenever I can too. Yes, sorry, Olivia.
These very drastic, very broad measures that you were talking about to mitigate against rising oil prices sound a bit like what Liz Truss attempted in 2022 at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. Are you not worried that they could be very inflationary? And second question, the 12% share of the vote recorded by YouGov for the Lib Dems at the last poll last week was the lowest recorded in this parliament. Are you worried that the Lib Dems are stalling?
Well, let's deal with Liz Truss first, because she had uncosted policies which did put up inflation. Ours are costed and will cut inflation. Don't take my word for it, but the OBR say that a 5p cut in fuel duty cuts inflation by 0.2%. Now, I don't know whether it works through like this, the OBR could say, but we're cutting it by 10p. So there's a good chance inflation could go down by 0.4%. So inflation going down under our policies in the way that it didn't under Liz Truss's. And if we do that, using the OBR figures, 0.4% reduction in inflation, that takes the pressure off interest rates, it takes the pressure off people and businesses, it also takes the pressure off debt interest service costs. So
does the same apply for rail fares and bus fares?
Yeah, it will do. It's fully funded, unlike Liz Truss's plan. So we're really proud of that. Now, listen, opinion polls go up and down, and we've had 14% under YouGov recently, which is more than we got at the general election. It's one of the reasons why we go into this set of elections really, really confident. We're expecting gains from the Conservatives in places like Surrey and Sussex and Hampshire and Hertfordshire and Huntingdonshire. We're expecting gains from Labour in London, in Birmingham, in Newcastle. We think we're going to do really well in places like Scotland. So, I'm really confident that we go into these local elections. I think it's the Conservatives and Labour who are desperate. I think that's one of the reasons why Kemi Badenoch's coming out with these completely uncosted, untrue lies in her policies, because she's so desperate. Oliver.
Rachel Reeves went on BBC Radio yesterday to say she was angry with Donald Trump for launching the war in Iran. At the same time, Keir Starmer addressed the nation on Iran and called for closer relations with the EU. Do you think you're setting the political weather? And is the government now actually and finally listening to you?
Well, they should have listened before. I don't think they're fully listening, I'm afraid. I think, for example, on the relationship with Trump, I still don't think they are standing up to him in the way they should. I mentioned earlier in my remarks about the state visit going ahead. And on Europe, I just think they're very, very timid. If we're going to stand up to Trump, but also stand up for British people, stand up for our economy, stand up for our defence, we have to work with allies far more closely. And I would argue Europe is critical to that. I think Commonwealth countries, obviously Canada and Australia, but others too, India, are important to that. I think in the Far East, working with Japan and Korea, we have to show we have alternatives. We have to reduce our dependency on the United States. This is one of the reasons I called for in my conference speech, that we needed to make sure our nuclear deterrent was genuinely independent and we weren't reliant on US to maintain and build the actual missiles.
Does it feel like, in some sense, you're 2 steps ahead, though, of the government in what you're calling for?
Well, I do agree with you. We are leading the political debate in Britain. We're leading it today by saying the best way to help people now is not to sit back and wait like the government, not to do basically nothing, as Farage and Badenoch would have you do. We're saying act now. This is a very affordable package. The government can afford it from the extra money they're getting in. Let's help people with petrol and diesel prices now. Let's help businesses. Let's get our economy going. And I'm afraid the caution from the government is just not good enough. So hopefully they'll listen to us today. Matilda. Hello.
Yeah, Matilda Martin from Politics Home. You spoke about wanting to follow other countries in the example they're setting. I in terms of Australia, some states are starting to make public transport completely free, and in Europe, they're telling people to kind of work from home and drive less. I know that you've spoken about kind of, being more efficient with fuel, but would you urge the UK government to go further and make public transport free or help people work from home?
We're proposing a dramatic cut in bus fares, cutting it by 2/3. That is a huge, huge cut. And I think it would be welcomed by huge numbers of people who are dependent on public transport across our country. And I think it would make the shift that people have argued for. I think our reduction in rail fares would do a similar thing. It's quite a big reduction and would create big savings for many, many people, and I hope would boost the numbers of people using our railways. So I think we are looking at other countries. You can't do exactly what they do. There's different issues, there's different situations, but we're really being bold about encouraging people to use public transport.
Do you think people should consider working from home where they can?
I think they do already. We saw a big shift obviously during COVID. But I'm a liberal. I believe people make those choices themselves. I think government needs to set the right leadership, and that's what we're doing today by cutting petrol and diesel costs and by cutting bus fares and train fares. David, hi.
Hello, Sir Ed. David Lynch from PA. Just wanted to ask two things, if I might. Firstly, you described this as an emergency measure that needs to be brought in straight away, or the Chancellor needs to act straight away, sorry. Why have you not taken the customary step that the Lib Dems usually do of asking for Parliament to be recalled during recess? And secondly, I'd just like to ask about another area of your party's policy, which is related to the war in Iran, which was, as you mentioned, your calls for an independent nuclear deterrent. When the Lib Dems were in government in the coalition era, the party got into this big debate about this idea of cutting the number of submarines, and there was all this talk about a part-time submarine deterrent, etc. The idea of funding a fully independent nuclear deterrent would be dramatically expensive. Can you commit that, should the Lib Dems be in power, that the deterrent would be fully funded and it wouldn't be a part-time deterrent?
First of all, let's deal with the deterrent issue. I think in the past no one had expected the United States would become an unreliable ally. I think that really has surprised people and changed the way we need to think about our economy and about our defence. And we need to think deeply about reducing our dependency on the United States. And we need to do that in all areas, whether it's technology, whether it's our trade relations. So it's got to be countrywide. I regret to say, let's hope Trump's successor enables us to normalise, but we've had the warning. And listen, France has an independent deterrent. And people who say we can't do this, I say, well, why can't we do what France has done? And if you look at the costs that France has taken, they're not hugely greater than the costs that we face. Let's remember that the vast majority of the costs of having a policy of 4 subs continuously operating a nuclear deterrent, most of that is in the submarines which are being built now, the dreadnought submarines. That's the big part of the cost. The warheads, another big part of the cost, they're being built in the UK. It's just the missiles. And I'm not saying that's minor. Of course, it's important, very significant. But you're going to have to take the decision now in order to be ready for being able to do that in 15 years' time, because you'll need to do it in the early 2040s. So we're really clear that the government should make that decision now, and that's why we've launched that position. Just to remind me, so I'm having a senior moment again. What was your first question?
It was about recall of Parliament.
Right, a recall of Parliament. How could I forget that one? Well, I'm almost tempted to say watch this space, but to be honest, this is a debate now, which we've got to get the government's attention, we've got to get the public's attention, because I hope the public will get behind the Liberal Democrats on this. And I think I'd like to see people, doing local petitions to their MPs. I'd like to see people campaigning. I'd like to see the media getting behind this campaign. You all know that people are suffering now. We've had a cost of living crisis for years. This outrageous, idiotic, illegal war supported by the Conservatives, supported by Reform, is the straw that will break the camel's back for so many families and pensioners and businesses. So I hope we can have a real campaign over the next few weeks to get behind this policy, which could really help people when they need it the most. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I get used to these surroundings because we're going to have quite a few more of them now. We've got our new HQ and our new press conference set, and it's going to be lovely to welcome you here today, so and in the future. So thank you very much for coming. Cheers.
Sorry. Exactly. Got to take a look at pastries. Both they were the try, but Harry didn't.
I think that's the impartial option anyway.
I think so, exactly.
Yeah.
It's only fair.